Hi Team AAA, it's Melissa, the owner of the AAA Financial Group and host of the Property, Ownership, Wealth and Everything Related, also known as the Power Podcast, where we chat about everything money, taking charge of your power, and we speak to special guests about how they arrived to where they are in their roles today. Be sure to follow our socials at AAA Financial Group on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and visit our website at www.AAAmortgages.com.au to read more about us and book in an appointment. Today's special guest is Zoë Robinson. Hi, Zoë.
Hi.
Now, we go way back to our university days where we studied law at Macquarie University, and it's safe to say that both our careers have gone in very different directions. And from what I say is the usual path of a lot of people become, study law and then they become a lawyer or thereabouts or related industries. We've both done something different, except that you went on to obtain a master's in human rights. So, you beat me on that one. Well done.
Not
Zoë, it's not. Zoë is the advocate of ACYP and the youngest person ever to hold this role. The ACYP is the advocate for children and young people. Now, what I like about Zoë is that she can talk on any topic and she's very knowledgeable in a lot of things, but she's also very friendly and warm and kind. And when I was looking at your LinkedIn profile today, I loved it. I am about people. I know that we can do better, that we want to do better, and that we can leave society in a better place.
Yeah, thanks. That's the hardest thing to write, I reckon, your LinkedIn profile. Oh, it was so good. But it was bad.
That one.
Yeah. And also I was just like, well, that's the reality of who I am.
Yeah.
Give me the opportunity to sit with people and be with people. And that's what I do.
That's what I enjoy. And you can see that, go through it, especially in your career. So let's start there. Let's talk about your career journey to date and how you arrived at ACYP.
Yeah, and it's not straightforward. And I think that's the thing that I really like talking about with people is that everyone thinks it's a clear path. And for me, it's never really been a clear path.
Yeah.
Other than I wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to be Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird. And I thought that I could change the world and that it would be really easy to do that.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I wanted to do law.
Yeah.
And originally I didn't think I'd get the marks to get into law, and so that was devastating, but did, and went to Macquarie University, Club Mac, and thoroughly enjoyed my time there.
Yeah.
But in the reality, I also failed my first semester of law, and there was a few kind of jarring things, but I just wanted to get out and be doing the work.
Yeah.
And then the reality was I ended up in mortgagee collections. So I get that. So I didn't end up in human rights. Like the absolute opposite. I did in human rights. Yeah, but it was good because from day one you were up at a courtroom, you were learning things you weren't just kind of hidden away, you were doing work. And it was at a time when it was kind of that transition when people didn't want to take people's homes. They wanted to try and do restructures or turnarounds in the big kind of sense of things, but trying to figure out how banks could be, I guess, more thoughtful about some of the stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, we definitely took people's homes, but it was a really interesting space to be in. But after being in that space for, 5 years, I thought, I'd do a Masters of Law. And I worked for this amazing partner who's no longer with us, Martin Hurst. And he said, yeah, but you don't love law, you love human rights. And he said, why don't you do a Masters of Human Rights? And I thought, okay, I thought I had to do law because I was working in a law firm and it made sense.
What great advice.
He was
listened to it.
Yeah, I listened to it. And he was the most incredible partner I worked for. Law firms can be full of a variety of partners, and he was human.
Yeah.
First, and he was really, he's a proud father and he was a really loving husband and he just loved the people who he worked with and he was thoughtful. So I did, and I enrolled at Sydney University and started my Masters of Human Rights. And at that time, you were allowed to do kind of a semester where you worked for an organisation. And that's when I did my overseas venture and went and worked in Houston.
Yeah.
And then came back, finished law, and just didn't love it. I loved the clients. I loved working with partners who were really thoughtful, but I didn't love the work. And again, I had another partner who said to me, you're not about the detail. And I'm not. Attention to detail is not my favorite thing.
We share that.
Yeah. I'd rather get out there and do the stuff. And so he said to me the same time at like a pivotal point in my career, is like, you can either keep going on this path or you could figure out what else you could do outside of law. And a lovely man. And I was like, you're right. I don't really want to do this stuff. So that's when I started to step out of law.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good people around me. Yeah, some really terrible partners I worked for sure, but some really good, thoughtful partners who just kind of encouraged me to do different things.
So then how did you end up at ACYP?
Yeah, so that's a really varied. So when I left law, the thing about law is everyone says you can do anything. And I'm sure you probably felt it as well. And you're like, when you don't want to do law, what do you mean I can do anything? Tell me what that actually.
Yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah. And no one can give you that straight answer. And so then I did a variety of things. So I went and started up a recruitment desk and I loved trying to find people better jobs in laws, but that's not necessarily what recruitment's always about. And then went to the Children's Hospital and worked in fundraising and loved that for a bit. And then got great advice again from someone where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And they said, why don't you see there's people in your network who do jobs that you like the idea of? I was like, okay, that's an interesting way. And there was a person I'd known for years who I always thought was an accountant, but then had this really cool job at Deloitte. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll have coffee with him. And he told me about his job. And I said, I like the idea of that. And Deloitte had just won Female Employer of the Year. And so it was a good brand. And I then started this path of meeting with a number of people who worked at Deloitte, partners and others. And then after a 7-week process, they offered me a job.
Yeah.
And that was wild and really, really good.
Yeah.
And I worked there for about 2.5 years. And then my dad got very sick. And so I went and lived with my parents up in Brisbane and wanted to spend time with my dad. And again, worked for a really lovely human being. And when I came, after my dad passed away and I came back, I realized that my work hadn't shifted. So it was lovely that people liked the person, but if the work wasn't moving, is the work the most purposeful thing I could be doing there? If it just relies on a human being, that probably means it's not sustainable work.
Yes.
So I had a conversation with a partner I worked for, who, again, a lovely person. And he said, from the moment I met you, social justice is your thing.
Yeah.
So why don't you go explore that? And if it doesn't work out, we'll always have you back here, but why don't you go figure it out? And then
Good.
Yeah.
To have that, go try, and if it doesn't work, there's a safety net here.
Yeah. And, probably a lot of people wouldn't think that was true. I mean, I believed him that there was a
I would too, like whether or not it would have happened.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, like what I was saying, I don't know how much impact I'd had on the organization. So it's so lovely that he thought like that.
Yeah.
And there was this job at a peak body for youth homelessness. And I thought, well, I know nothing about homelessness, but I can bring people together to solve a complex issue. So I had a very frank conversation with the recruiter and said, tell them that I'm not from this sector, private sector, but I'm motivated by doing better for people.
Yeah.
So got that job and did that. And in that time, had some things going on in my personal life that I wanted to take care of. And I thought, peak land is really hard. There's probably, peak bodies in finance world are exactly the same. It's really hard work because you're meant to be reflecting and speaking about the collective, but it's taxing.
Of course.
And so I stepped into Premier's department and thought I could be a small fish in a big pond and it would be great.
Yes.
And then a minister called me and said, we need someone to step into the advocate role in an acting capacity.
Yeah.
And I thought, I knew the role. I thought I was probably too young for it in my own head. Like
How old were you?
I was 35, turning 36.
That's so young to be an advocate role.
Yet. And but it was also one of those things where I just felt like that's a big person's job. Like you've got to be a serious person. And you know this, and you're probably like me. I'm not the most serious person in a room.
No.
I quite like going into rooms and I'll make a fool of myself, but I'll make people feel comfortable and so I just didn't think I was a serious person for the job.
Yes, yeah, I know. The icebreaker.
Yeah.
The relax people and have the chat.
Correct.
Totally.
And so, but I thought, why not?
Give it a go.
It's a year.
Yeah.
At that stage and then we'll see. And so in 2020, I started in the role and then the world went into a different way. And so when I got into the role, we just had those awful bushfires. And so we immediately did a report on the voice of young people in disaster. And so we're immediately on the road. I remember going to Bateman's Bay and Mogo, and it was just something I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
And then as we progressed through that, we started to get into a lot of COVID. And so, yeah. And then I applied for the job at the end of that term and got it. So now it's been 6 years in total, but 5 years in the official capacity.
And the youngest person to do it.
Yeah, the youngest person, now it's held across Australia by another person in the ACT, very deserving. But certainly at the time I got it, there were no other commissioners who were around that kind of age.
What makes sense though, right? If you're an advocate for young people and you're closer to young than old, you would have more in common with them.
Yep.
I know you've done a lot of work in the Youth Advisory Council and other things where you're actually getting the collective of young people.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, but then also you need somebody that can actually stand up to the task. So obviously you make sense for the role.
I mean, I think it's so nice that people say that. And certainly as it comes towards the end of my term, there's a lot of reflection. I think the thing is in anything that you're doing, be it a startup, taking on after somebody else has done a job, you have to have an energy and an enthusiasm about you that makes sense for the people you serve. And so if I wasn't meeting what young people are meeting me with in terms of their energy and enthusiasm and hope, then that would just be doing a massive disservice. So, I think with so many things, it's got to be about you are meeting people at the right time, but also with that right kind of energy. And it looks different in different spaces, but
It does.
young people are full of so much hope, enthusiasm. That
They are. Well, we hope that they are.
Yeah, they mostly are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's 0 to 24 as I've researched. And, I did look on the website prior to this just to kind of make sure I fully understood. Even going into items like the cost of living and things like that, what do they do? What do young people think these days? Because, when I was 24, I was like, okay, I'm going to buy an apartment. I'm finished uni. I'm going to do this. Now it's like, where am I going to live?
Yeah.
How am I going to feed myself? If I want children, I can't do it now.
Yeah.
What's the feedback on the current state of affairs regarding the cost of living?
So it's been so every year we do quantitative polling. So we always go out to young people every year just to ask them about the things that are mattering to them to make sure that we're on track with our work, but also so that we can hold government and business and community to account. So this is what actually young people are saying. Yeah. And the cost of living has been the number one issue for the last 3 years. Now, when we started doing the cost of living report, the thing that I thought was really interesting is cost of living, that phrase in of itself, is applicable to a certain group of people. Young people and the people we worked with for that report talked about survival. And there was also this rhetoric that was going on in the public that just said, well, you just have to make different choices as a young person now. Like, that's what it is, right? Make a different choice. And so we had the avocado toast debate when we were younger.
I'll tell you what I had for breakfast.
Avocado toast, I hope. Yeah. So that was the kind of criticism that was laid at the heat for us, that we just had to make a different choice. Yeah. Now the choices that they're making are to turn their heating on or not in winter.
Yeah.
To eat 3 meals a day or not. To go to a doctor or not. And that to me is actually the fundamentals of a right to be a young person. Your health and your housing and all of that are rights that we hold. So it's not just about, can I buy in a suburb I thought I could buy in?
Yeah.
It's actually, can I survive in the places that I'm told are the only places I can afford to live in?
Yeah.
And so it's very different. And, there are things that worked before that I just don't think work now. So,
it's an example
Well, anytime I talk to businesses and they say, what's one thing we can do for young people? I was like, don't have unpaid internships. It just can't. It's not the same. It's not the same. We did work experience in year 10, all of that stuff. We would take free gigs because I lived at home for a period of time, so I could. Don't do unpaid internships. Pay people.
Yeah.
The teachers and social work students and all of those that have a prac, having to do that unpaid and then still work to meet your rent, that's unbelievable. The fact that social work students have to work 900 hours for free, I can't get my head around.
Social work as well, right? Social work, people with purpose trying to help others, and they have to do that.
Yeah.
I can't get my head around that either.
And it just doesn't fit right now.
No.
things like even under 18 free transport. You know, that for me, I mean, I only recently learnt this, which really threw me, is that the student Opal card doesn't work in holidays. So you get the benefit of the concession when you're going, but when it's not, you're not getting free travel or concession travel. That to me feels like a red tape thing that we probably created that we didn't necessarily need to do. So let's make it free for under 18s because
So also, what are they going to work? Like, you know, as high school students, I had jobs.
Yeah.
And so if I needed to get the bus somewhere, I got out my 30 cents. That's showing my age now. But, you know, it's different now. And obviously that would assist.
Yeah.
So then that leads me to when you speak to governments, because as the advocate, depending which government it is, do they listen? How do you push the needle a bit more in the favor?
It's interesting because I think I never thought naively that it would be tricky to advocate for children and young people. I thought that would be kind of almost a no-brainer.
Of course.
Like I thought people
The vulnerable, the innocent.
the ones who don't have a seat at a table, because we want them to be having childhoods and all of that stuff. So I thought that it would be really easy.
Yeah.
And it's not that that people don't get it. I think people fundamentally get that they want to do good things for children and young people. But when you're talking about government and politics, it's got to be wrapped up in the things that make sense to a government at the time. So it has to be things like infrastructure and building and the education system and health and the things that align with how a government is structured. And we will often say, because children and young people say, they're not thinking about a government agency. They're just thinking about where they're existing and what they might need in that moment. So sometimes it's difficult for us to package up the thing because it might not be, you know, it might not just be aligned to education or health or the systems, if just how they feel and what they think they need right now. So that's tricky. So you've got to operate within that kind of framework. And also because some of the problems that ACYP in my time have looked at are really complex problems. You know, children and young people in out-of-home care and foster care is a tricky problem. Children and young people in the justice system and the things that they need is really complex. And that takes time. And we don't exist in a world that has 20-year contracts for services to be able to make those kind of long-lasting changes. So yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I think they would say they love hearing from young people and sitting with young people, and certainly that can be the impact that can change some politicians' minds on things once they've seen young people talk about it or heard directly from young people.
Yes.
It's just how quickly you can turn a ship to shift that direction.
And how long that government's going to be around. Yeah. And if they're campaigning or if they find it useful or not. Yeah. You know, to their own, what their own, you know, plans are for themselves.
Absolutely.
So I totally get that. I did not know about the public transport thing. That's something that needs to change.
Well, and Victoria just announced free transport for those under the age of 18. So
good.
it's always good when other states are doing
it. Yeah.
It helps us a bit.
Absolutely. But I guess, you know, even just talking to me now is going to create potentially conversations within homes, within schools. And I think that's the whole point of the advocacy, even with small level here, is to be talking about these things. And people who have young children, you know, what's the future for them? You know, Australia's been lucky as an economy, I would say, historically over time. However, we've been through some tough times. It feels like there's going to be some more tough times coming. So how do we protect the innocent and how do we help them is I guess exactly what they're doing.
It's what you say, those dinner conversations, people often ask me who don't work in the government space, and some people ask me in the government space, what is one thing you want us to know? And it is that I want people to have different conversations about children and young people. I want people to understand that the way we operate is that children and young people do have an interest in the world that we exist in, and it's not necessarily just what we think it is, right? So sometimes we think it's negative, sometimes we think they're over preaching, whatever it is. But actually, I want the dinner conversations to change. I also want people to realize that we are imperfect and there are things that we are doing in this state that will have lasting negative impacts on young people. And And I didn't know that until I worked into this sector, right?
Yeah.
You and I both grew up in similar areas. Yeah, really lovely childhoods. Actually, lucky, very lucky.
Yeah.
And so I want people like you and me to have different dinner conversations and to challenge that kind of thinking that it's all okay. Like it's not all okay for children and young people.
No.
But the things that we can do to help them
Yeah.
mean that we need to be thinking differently and having very different conversations. And that I think is important.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not to scare. It's not a scare tactic, but it's, you're on this planet for, hopefully 100 years, say. And so what's going to happen next? And let's talk about it so it's not a stressful situation, because there's a lot of families that are stressed at the moment and
Sure.
we don't know which way things are going and we've got everything happening.
And social media is a good conversation, right?
Yeah. Oh, of course.
If you just looked at what was written in the paper about social media and you were a parent of a young teenager, you are somewhere between wanting to throw every device in the ocean and never let your children on social media
100%.
versus trying to go to every school presentation that's telling you about how to handle social media and the pitfalls of it.
Yeah.
So trying to get yourself super informed by it or just wanting it to stop you existing.
Yeah.
And young people have a view on that. They sit in the middle with ideas about what it is. And all of the good research and all of the good people like our e-safety commissioner will say, if it is informed by what young people want and are seeing and experiencing, then we can get through this.
Yeah.
But we all have to have very non-scared conversations about it, non-fearing conversation. I was at a presentation where someone suggested now is the time for parents to panic. And I thought, that is the worst slide to put up in a room. Yeah, correct. And like every parent's like, all right, what are we panicking about? Add it to the list of things. And so if you were just watching one view of the world around social media, you would be really scared.
Yeah.
When actually young people themselves are the first to say to you, we know it's good and we know there's bad. Yeah, so can you help us understand the bad stuff? The difference, and so we can recognize it.
Yeah.
But one young person said to me as well, if we keep banning it or pushing it, we're just going to push kids more into the dark. So when 100% something is happening, they won't feel comfortable to come forward. And that's the thinking I think we've got to think about. But if you just read the stuff, it would be very frightening. I have the privilege of hearing from young people who are very thoughtful to say, we know, can you just help us a little bit more and maybe do some stuff by making sure the big companies are held accountable?
True. I get that. My personal view is that it's not going anywhere.
No.
But it's how you use it and who you liaise with. And especially, having children, but also having them affected in year 3 and year 4 by certain things.
Yep.
And the mental health side of things is something that we feel like, oh, no, like get rid of it. But really, let's talk those things through. And it is communication. It's exactly what we're doing now. If every child could speak to a parent or somebody in a trusted position who is trustworthy, and tell them how the things are, I would say most people in those positions would be in a position to offer some support or help.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, if you're struggling with something and you can't get the right words or whatever it is, or there's not the right people, you will look in places that you might find helpful and unhelpful information. And so we know it's not going anywhere. So there is this responsibility of how we, parents, teachers, community broadly. I remember people talking about the lighthouse adults in people's lives, other adults that kids see who they might trust, to be those spaces so that you don't have to go into those places. Or if you have gone into those places, you can still have those conversations. So we've still got to create different spaces for young people to want to step into and say, hey, I am struggling with this. But we also know that if they are struggling in the first place and we haven't met them at that need, then they will go to places to try and find other answers.
Yeah, understood. Wow. So literally, it's so much what you do. And it's like a lot of trust that, is in your hands. So I get it. And mate, you must be happy that it's nearly at its end, maybe? Or how do you feel about the day we are almost finishing, and what are your plans?
I'm really mixed about it. One, I don't think the social services sector talk about reflective practice.
Yeah.
And I haven't done it. So that you should spend some time reflecting on what's just happened.
Yeah.
And I did the thing that, everyone does. I bought a book to try and start thinking of. And then I couldn't bring myself to open the book because I was like,
Yes.
what? I'm not, where are you going to do it? And yes. And also I think everyone is really bad at owning the stuff that they've done. I think everyone, and it's always a collective. Actually, it's the Office of the Advocate for Children and Young People. So there's a bunch of people that make that happen.
Yes.
But to sit there and go, I have to do this because I also then have to get another job. So I have to be able to articulate what I've done. And
That's exactly why you should write down the link of achievement.
everyone goes, like we did a massive special inquiry into children who were housed in hotels and motels and caravan parks. In the social services sector, that means something. I was talking to someone the other day who was in property, and I was like, you can articulate what you do in property. The soft skills I have are really hard to articulate. But if you give me a complex problem and you want to find a positive solution that benefits the people, yeah, I can do that. That's what I can do.
Yeah.
So it is difficult to think about.
I think you said it well then.
Yeah, there we go. Just cut that, and that's my bio.
Yeah.
Oh,
I really hope there's more, but maybe there's not.
keep going.
But I think that's really difficult. And then the other thing is, I'm not finished with children and young people. Like, I'm in a space, and I think we are, that we want that part of hope and ambition, right? And we can spend a lot of time saying this is how it's always been done, or this is the policy, or this is whatever it is, wherever you are. Children and young people don't exist in that space. They exist in I want to go to this thing and I want to do this thing. Let's do that. And how do we get there?
Yeah.
And then that's what they want to do. And so I think I want to still exist in a world of like hope and like deep, high ambition. And that's where I think young people are.
Hope and high ambition.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I also did like a holiday.
Lifted.
I would like a holiday. I think it's been 6 years of hard work for sure.
I like the idea of the reflection side, and then also just letting it go will be a big thing. And I've done that you've done it a few times in your career. I've done it a few times as well. And it's like you kind of have these chapters that close, but they're still always there. But then I believe that every chapter happens so that the next one, the next good one, the next one, if it's a shit one, a shorter one. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every job, you probably don't know, but all the things you did when you first had a career probably helped this one.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form. Standing up on your feet, if you weren't really accustomed to what you're doing straight away, and doing that in a court of law for someone who's gone MIP on a hat, like all those things help along the way. Certainly for me, I was in fashion for many years and now do construction. It's like, how does that work? Well, the margins are the same. It's an Excel spreadsheet. And then the conversations that you have.
Yeah.
Half of what I do is the relationships that I have with people.
Yeah.
Getting the deals done, solving complex problems.
Yeah. And I feel
I don't think I could do it with children. I think I'd just be too emotional and I'd lose it.
don't think I'm not. Don't think that's not right.
You're stronger, I get, than me. If I hear a sad story, I'm like, I can't. Like, even just talking to you about the caravan thing, I was like, okay.
Yeah, that stuff is really bad. And sitting in 22 interviews with kids who were in those situations and I wasn't taking them home.
Yeah.
Is really tough. But I think, that piece of purpose is such a huge thing for people. And it also can sound really like whatever, but I'm driven by, I innately believe that there is good.
Yeah.
Like that is just where I'm at. Like I think that people on this planet, and like I'm globally ambitious in the fact that I think we are all motivated by good. It can just look different for sure.
Exactly.
But I think in terms of some of that skill set, some of the things that, my wonderful team will say to me, and it's true, like I haven't written a speech in 6 years. And I think
I've delivered them.
But I delivered them. But I think that's also, all of the drama and speech and drama I did at school, my mum will be so grateful that went somewhere. But that ability to think on my feet
Absolutely.
Has always been very useful.
Yes.
And then obviously the law side of things is a good practice to have.
Of course.
But the only thing when I speak to some young people now who ask me that I think that matters, like you said, is relationships. I am genuinely invested and meaningful about the connections I make.
Yeah.
And that I think is the ultimate thing that has helped me.
Yes.
And I think It's never been a one-way street. It's been a genuine investment in wanting to know a person. And that came from just life. That came from watching people in my life care about each other genuinely.
Yeah.
And wanting to do the same.
Complex problems, ask them and dealing with those scenarios. Apply that into corporate worlds, into your world, into others.
And I think probably similar to you, like in my dad and his business, he knew the people that worked for him and he knew about their families, and he took leaps of faith on people because he wanted to give them a job and an opportunity. And, my mum worked at a school and she knew the students and she, knew about what was going on for them. And I remember having, friends of mine, siblings sit with her because they were so stressed about an exam. And so she would sit with them, and that's just relationships, and it's useful. And I think it's one of the most powerful tools that people can have, especially when it's genuine and comes from the right place.
We've gone through all the questions I had. I was just going to ask you like 3, 4, 5 power questions about your job. I think that'll be really helpful for people out there, like 1-word answers or 1 sentence.
Yes. Okay, Ham, let's go. You'll be good at this.
Okay, 1 word to describe Gen Z.
Misunderstood.
Got it. Podcast or book you would recommend to a young person? Any book.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's not fading. Yeah, always To Kill a
It's a
Mockingbird.
great book.
It is a great book, and I've been challenged by young people that it hasn't stood the test of time.
No.
Yeah, and I mean,
I really called my kid Atticus.
Yeah, well, I got a dog called Tom Robinson, so that's probably worse if you've read the book and seen the movie. But I just think perspective is such an important thing. And things might not always stand the test of time, but that book changed an entire thinking, and she never meant it to.
No.
And To Kill a Mockingbird has stood the test of time in some ways. I get that it's controversial in some ways, but I think everyone should read books like that.
It's a good answer. Okay. If you could change one policy tomorrow, what would it be?
We don't suspend kids from school.
Just gonna let that sit there.
Suspension, yeah.
Power is
Vulnerability.
the best. Thank you so much for your time. No worry, you have to come back.
I'd love to.
You've been, finished the chapter.
Yeah.
Had the holiday.
Yeah.
Because I think while we've spoken about you and your career, there's much more we can talk about and get in more depth on.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much.
I loved it. Thank you.